Aloha, it's Debbie Zimmerman. It's great to be with you again, and thanks for tuning in to I know it's going to be a very, very special story. I'm here to introduce you to my friend, my new friend, Danielle, and she has an incredible journey with ASD to talk to you about. So Danielle, I'm just going to turn it over to you and tell us a little bit about your journey with your son, Garrett.
So Garrett is, currently he is 6 years of age, and we had received his diagnosis at age 4. He's been diagnosed with severe autism with global developmental delays and an IQ less than 60. So we weren't given a lot of hope for our son, but he had a mama that was willing to fight. And and one other thing I should mention, he was completely nonverbal. So I was his voice. I was his voice. I was his protector. Everywhere we went outside, if he had any sort of issues, I was the person that took it all. I took everything. So our journey really started with looking for someone who just could kind of walk the path with us, not, and just give us hope and give us support along the way. I realized real quick that wasn't really out there. There wasn't a lot of understanding from the medical professions. Every kind of, I had a lot of barriers come forward because of what I was asking. And so what I was asking for our son was a holistic approach, and I just wanted to understand this diagnosis better. So what happened for us is we ended up waiting about 4 months. It took us about 4 months, and we just had to wait to get a referral to go see a pediatrician. And so we went and we found a wonderful pediatrician who had lived where we were at, and she had, and I say had, a son diagnosed with autism, and she was able to reverse his autism with nutrition and with certain therapies that she learned to walk into his world and invite him out. So I was intrigued. So when I met her, I felt like we were in the right place. This is where we needed to be. And immediately she recommended supplements. She didn't really know what we were going to need, but she said, let's start out with these certain supplements that she said I've seen good results with. So we started them, and we did see the glossiness that he had in his eyes. We did see that sort of go away, but that took over a year of taking that, and a lot of work on my part to hide these supplements in his applesauce and just in things. So we went back to the pediatrician sort of over the course of a year, every 3 months. Not a lot of changes, but still felt like we were on the right path. So the next thing she advises is to go and seek more of that therapy base to see if we can reach our son. So that's where we ended up going to a program in Massachusetts, and that I started that program on Garrett's 5th birthday. So that was very, very, dates really resonate with me, and so it was his birthday, his 5th birthday. So I ended up, right away I knew, again, I was in the right place. This was a new home, but it really was an opportunity for me to understand autism. I was able to look into the eyes of other parents and say, you're not alone. I'm walking the same path that you are. And that's the one thing as parents, you really feel alone. We isolate ourselves. And so that's what happened for me. And I did realize later on in this journey that I went into a depression and that I had anxiety every time I brought my son out, not because of my son, but because of what everybody else around me not understanding autism. So I kind of felt like I was now going to have to educate every single person we came into contact with, and I wasn't strong enough. Right? That's what it comes down to. So we started just isolating ourselves into our own home, and that became very difficult. The family didn't understand what we were going through. I lost friends, lots of friends not understanding. I was told that my son just needs just a little bit extra discipline. I was just told all these things, right? And I'm like, you just don't get it, right? So when we go to Garrett's birthday, I start seeing that really this journey was not my son's journey, that this was my journey. It was my journey of discovery of how to self-love. And so that's kind of, you know, I've learned the words that have come to me is, I've learned that from this point on, or like I've learned that words have power, and it's what we say to ourselves that really molds what we believe. The mindset, the belief, right? That belief. So anyways, so I continued searching all this time while we were learning about autism and learning that it's important to, instead of that whole push and pull and trying to get these children to do what we want them to do, this is about me going to you and figuring out what you need, and learning just a whole different way, right?
Oh, Sunrise.
And this is Sunrise, their philosophy. So we call that the Sunrise attitude. So there's a lot more to it, but really for us, it was I come home and I taught the attitude to my family. So I just said, you know what, we need to be more positive. We need to be we need to see Garrett for Garrett and not for his diagnosis. And that's really hard, because with any diagnosis, all of a sudden we seem to adopt that diagnosis and say, you know, if you get, somebody says, well, you know, you have cancer. We accept, you know, whether we accept it or not, we start to believe that that's who we are and that it's bad. And so what I guess for me, my mission and my purpose now is to show parents the importance of not, you know, believing everything, but believing that there's a reason. I guess, like, don't believe the negative that comes with anything that we're, you know, thrown at in life, because life is going to throw us lots of stuff, but we get to determine how well we let it stick, right? And that's the critical thing. And so I guess I gave away my power to autism, but then I learned, so age 5 and in a short period of time, because Garrett's actually going to be turning 7 at the end of this year. So I want to bring you through 5 to, so at about 5.5, I had still been searching for something for Garrett. And I identified that whole, I would read up about autism. I identified leaky gut. I identified all this stuff. But I am a person that, you know, you can read a lot, but how does it relate to me and what I'm going through? So I learned really quickly that I wanted to see proof that the leaky gut was really leaky gut. So we went and found a doctor in about an hour and a half away, and we went and seen her, and we decided to have his blood tested. One thing that our pediatrician did offer was genetic testing, but you know, and we'll get into it later, but my husband, through this journey, we've identified that he has Asperger's, and so I didn't need to confirm genetic because I had my genetic testing right in front of me, right? But what I needed to confirm is, what is the problem, so that I can find a solution. I keep it simple.
He's still nonverbal.
He's completely nonverbal. He's banging his head on the floor. He's not playing with his brothers. He's not eating. He's being very picky on what he eats. And what he's eating is he's wanting the sugars and all these things that I know are not good. But from a parent's perspective, you're like, well, he's got to eat, right? So you start, you know, a negotiation, right? Inside and internally in that. So we get the blood tested, and that for me was sort of my second day, the second D day for me. Epiphany. Yeah. Because that was the day that I had the aha moment, that I said, you know what, when we tested the blood, she immediately spent 2 hours with us, looking at it on a big screen and showing me what everything meant. The one thing that really stood out was his blood was clumped together like mud.
Mm.
And it was moving very, very slowly. So when you look at anything blood related, the blood cells should be round.
Mm-hmm.
That's a healthy blood cell. They shouldn't be lemon shaped. They shouldn't be all jaggedy. Like, you know, you start learning that. They should be round and they should be free to flow wherever the body needs them to go.
Mm-hmm.
So his was moving like in mud, like sludge, very slow. And in 2 hours, I don't think I saw very many move. Okay. So immediately I was like, well, no wonder he has autism. That was like, because I knew if the oxygen doesn't reach the brain starts to die.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, that's when I realized, and she looked at me and she said, you have a very, very sick little boy here. But physically, he looked okay.
That's the tough thing about
That's
autism,
tough,
right?
right?
Yeah.
So he looked okay. We had some issues with eating and this and that. But it wasn't until I looked inside the body that I knew. Garrett never got sick. She said, well, his fight or flight responses are in overdrive 24 hours a day. And I'm like, well, Garrett doesn't sleep. She's like, yes, because his body can't go into a rest and digest position.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, very common. We would get Garrett to bed about 11 at night. And by 3 a.m., he's jumping on our heads, wound for sound. And you're like, what the heck's going on? That's when I learned about the toxins that leave the gut and what that does. That was where leaky gut came into. I had a big picture of what leaky gut looked like. So I was like, okay, so what I did is I just took all the little issues, right? Undigested food, and I just put them all sort of out there, like, you know, a card game. And I said, okay, here we have leaky gut. We have all these things. All right, so I'm going to pick this card up, and we're going to, like I said, what's the most important thing to deal with today? So for me, it was really to get that blood moving, right? Leaky gut is something that there's no timeline on how long it's going to take to heal. It could be a lifetime, right? So it took me 4 months. This particular physician or doctor gave me 24 different supplements to try. I looked at her, $300. I said, I'll buy some of them, but I'm not buying them all. It was $300 later, and every single month for 4 months, I threw those supplements in the garbage because he absolutely refused them. Garrett would smell them and say, and he wouldn't say nothing. He would just not take them. He, you know, so it was a fight. There was this constant battle. So what happened is, so it took about 4 months, and then, you know, where we're at is I'm at that point in my life with him that I'm like, okay, now I know what the problem is, and I don't have a solution. So I'd have to say I prayed for a solution, and that's kind of where the journey, sort of that next step came with, where, you know, I was on Facebook, and someone just posted a picture of their child drinking this drink. And at first I'm kind of like, yeah, but it wasn't the picture that grabbed my attention. It was the fact that she had actually said, I can't believe that I forgot to give my son his vitamins this morning, and he come home from school and said, where is that magic juice? I need it. I thought, okay, now the kid's telling me, you know. So I'm like, well, we got to try this, right? That was I think pivotal for me. So what happened is I went online, and I had said to my husband, I'm like, you know, let's just buy the product. Let's just test the product. I like to play a lot of things safe in my life, but then there's sometimes I don't play safe. Like I'm kind of like, you know, so, and I'm so glad that I didn't play it safe in this decision. So what happened is I said, you know, this is where you have to understand, in our life, it was very pivotal because I actually had to leave a career in order to be home with my son, because the amount of phone calls I would receive in a day from daycare saying, we can't handle your son. He's going to hurt somebody. But it was never about what my child needed. I wasn't hearing what my child needed. It was, well, we can't, like, it was, once again, that education piece, right? And so I decided to take myself, I left my massage therapy career to be home with him when he was young, And then when it was time for me to go back to work, or what I felt was my time, I found something, but it just didn't feel right. So I had to make a decision. I had asked my boss if I could go part-time so I could do his therapy. And my boss just looked at me and said, well, how long is this autism going to really
Oh gosh.
be? And I'm thinking, this isn't a cold. And I even offered to work the weekends and all the shifts that nobody else wanted. So I knew then that I had to leave.
Okay.
So I cut the ties with that company and just said, well, you know what? We need an income. And so that's when I chose the route of going with not only trying a product, but decided that, because I said to my husband, let's be a customer. And he said, if this works for our son, and if it's everything that it says that it's going to be, don't you want to be a part of that? So I said yes.
So you immediately signed up as a distributor.
A distributor of a product that I never had tried. That's not risk. You know, I play safe, but then I'm like at the other end going, well, let's just go for it, right? So yeah, so our product arrived, and that's where we're at. We're like, okay, will he take it? So I guess I'll kind of step us a little bit further. I made up the kids fundamentals. I didn't worry about any other product. I just said, I just want to focus. Remember that one card, the gun, right? And so, because I knew that if we could sort of close some of those gaps, maybe the blood would have time to do what it's got to do. Because I know the body can heal itself. I trusted in that alone, right? That my belief is always that the body can take care of itself. It is designed to take care of itself. But sometimes it needs a little help along the way. So what happened for us is we made it up. We started out slow with a half scoop of the fundamentals, but we went like a week later, we were at the full dose. Like we didn't hold it back too much. We wanted to get to that full dose as quickly as we could. So the thing that Garrett did was he smelt it. He's been our kid detective. He smelt it, and then he put it on a little bit on his tongue, and then it's like he looked at us like he didn't do a lot of that before, but he just looked over at us to say like, okay, I'll trust you here, So because we had been practicing sort of that sunrise attitude that we had learned, so we had already been bonding with our son before we introduced a supplement, right? And I think it's important, but it's really easy to bond with your autistic child. And that'll be something we should talk about another time on how to do that bonding, because it's important from a parent's perspective to really feel a connection to your child. So what happened for us is he took it, and then the next day he took it, and the next day, and we actually honestly were waiting for him to not take it because that was our experience. So what had happened is he took it within about 3 weeks. He took it every single day, and for 3 weeks we started seeing changes in how he responded to us. So the first thing that happened for us is he would look us, we'd call his name, and he would look our way. That was a huge improvement from, and then about 2 months into it, so it was at that 2 month mark, he was taking every single day. So at 2 months, he woke up and he was screaming. He had broke out in mouth blisters, inside his mouth, outside of all his lips were covered with blisters.
Wow.
But no fever. So you're thinking, okay, this isn't like a cold thing. So immediately I said to my husband, I think it's a detox. I've read about it. Let's, So immediately we really just comforted. He did not eat or drink for 5 days. But we just said we had to be comfortable with it. When he would go to sleep, we would apply aloe, we would apply coconut, like anything to really keep these lips, So that healing took place. And then approximately, then we reintroduced that fundamentals again, because it's like, don't give up. You've got this far, don't give up. So that's the key, is parents get to that detox, and then they say, oh, I can't handle this. And I'm like, no, that is probably the breakthrough moment, right? And so understand that when you get to that point, you are like, and you might not get to that point for 6 months. You know what, everything's different, right? so what happened for us is he ended up retaking the product, no problem. So I'm like, okay, slow introduction, same thing as we did. But what happened for us is my husband reads to our children at night. That is his thing with the kids. And so he was laying with Garrett in bed, and he, for Garrett, because he can't like understand or follow along with reading, he had put on just a video with a puppet. Well, the puppet was singing. It was a ventriloquist, actually. And so my husband, I was downstairs, and he hollered at the top of his lungs, and he's like, "Get up here now." And I'm thinking, oh my God, something's wrong with the children, right? So he stopped me at the door because he's laying in bed and he's videotaping. Garrett started singing for the first time. His first words was a song, and it wasn't a nursery rhyme or anything that you would expect. It was the song that the puppet was singing, or the ventriloquist. And it was, "Man, I feel like a woman."
Take whatever.
Right, we'll take whatever. But those high notes, he was hitting them, and I'm like, and the words were clear, and I'm just like, my God, so we were very ecstatic. We have that video, so it was really like hope igniting, right? Because when you've lost all this hope, and then it's like hope igniting, right? So he continued to start to sing and stuff like that, and still to this day, now he's singing the "Row, row, row your boat," and he loves all these nursery rhymes because we've incorporated song as a communication tool for him, because we've identified when he was stimming or isming, it was always to a beat. So that's the thing, is you really have to start paying attention to what their stimming behavior is. What is calming them? And we learned that it was rhythm. Right.
But he talks as well, right? He doesn't just sing, he talks as
well. Now. So he progressed from singing to now he actually can express his needs. He can tell me when he's hungry, he can tell me when he's hurt. It went from like 3-4 word sentences. Now he's starting to bring in like the verbs and nouns, like "I am jumping," and and things like that, or "let's go." The interaction with his brothers, they're being boys and they're wrestling on the trampoline, but he's playing hide and go seek with, when the boys' friends come over, he's engaging, like he's totally in with them, right?
He's out of his own world and he's into our world.
Does he still go back sometimes? Yeah. But he doesn't stay long.
What about his emotional regulation?
So that was a big change that we saw, because we really felt like he was like keeping everything sort of. He didn't know how to express his emotion. And that's why he would bang his head. That frustration always was shown with banging his head on the floor. So that was when we started to see emotion, like he would say, "Ouchie." We would start tears was the thing that was the more physical body. He started, if he hurt himself, he would run over, and depending on the variation of that hurt, you would see tears, or he knew mommy always kissed things better. So he would come to me, and he, whatever was hurting, it was like he was communicating to me, non-verbally, "Kiss this and it feels better." Teeth. He'll come and teeth brushing, we're still working on as a goal, but he'll take my hand now, and when he has a loose tooth, he'll put my finger on it to wiggle it, and it's he pulls his teeth out when they're loose, like no problem, right? But there's just when he regulates himself now, usually that's where we get even more language, where we're like, he'll look at us when he's done regulating, because he knows that we're not casting any judgment, that we're allowing him to regulate. And when he knows that he is safe and he can regulate in our world too, that is huge, because then he'll look at us and say, "I'm fine." And then he carries on like nothing ever happened. So for a child that can regulate themselves is huge, right? It's huge. So where we're at today, I guess, is we are now introducing, we had the blood results, right? And I have a Facebook page. So I know this is a long, because this is 2 years I'm wrapping into a short period of time. But if you ever want any more information, his journey is on Garrett's Autism Journey to Recovery. I'm here today to share Garrett's story, but really it's an opportunity for me to reach the parents that have been given no hope. And if I can just ignite just a little bit of hope in them, then I want to hear their story.
So tell us about the blood.
Yes.
The second blood test.
So the second blood test comes back literally 1 year to the day, but he'd only been on the kids' fundamentals for 8 months. So we had the blood tested. She looked at it and she said, so you're taking all those 12 different supplements I gave you? I said, nope. I said, nope, not at all. I said, but this is what we're giving him. She says, okay. And she kind of put it to the side to test his blood. Test it, and she says, oh my goodness, like she just like immediately his blood was swirling, the cells were round, they were, you know, and they were oxygen, it was moving around, right? And she says, my goodness, like this is just amazing, you know. So we seen unremarkable, like either something was gone completely or marked improvement, like at least a 50 to 60% increase. Heavy metals were decreased to almost, they're still there a little bit, but not. There's still some undigested food, and there's still some parasites. The parasites, though, are not inside the blood cell, they're outside, which is great because now you can start introducing products that the parasites don't feed on, which is the superfoods. You feed that, they die because they're starving because you're giving them good nutrition. And then the fiber, the seed fiber, is flushing it out of his system. So the biggest result that came, and that was where it was completely eliminated, was the candida in his gut was gone.
We were on antifungals for 2 years before MRA.
8 months. 8 months, candida was gone, and that was in a 6-year-old body, right? Because he's almost 7 here in December. So in that period of time is huge. And then he ended up, now he tries all kinds of new foods. We're still gluten-free, casein-free, but we bring in gluten, natural cheeses, hard cheeses now. He doesn't get a processed food. He does like his Lay's potato chips still, but you know what I've learned is we give him a little bit, like everybody. Sometimes you just need that little taste, right? For me, myself, I give him, I crave salt now and again, so you always have a go-to product, like, you know, but I know that as his gut continues to heal, that won't be an issue, right? But like trying to think here, ground meat now, and we have grass-fed organic cow. So we purchase half a beef at winter, and you know, and our farmer knows that Garrett's autistic, and he says, I make sure there's always meat for Garrett because he knows how important it is for him to get something. But he does like so what I did as a tip for parents for the diet side of it, I didn't do any special GAPS diet and all these because they're just too overwhelming for me. So what I did is I said, okay, what can we focus on, and let's just change that, right? So that was immediately where we eliminated a lot of these different, like the high sugar foods, and you know, just I would go to the grocery store and spend a few hours. Once you know the product's good, you don't have to do the research again, right? You know that I can buy this and it's a good product. But the biggest change that I've seen in Garrett since the candida's been gone is he doesn't, yogurt I can actually leave in the fridge and I buy gluten-free now, but like it's sweetened with stevia. I've just learned good, better, best, right? So he'll have yogurt can stay there and he's not gonna eat 12 of them at one sitting. And so, you know, and I don't see the yogurt as a probiotic. I really don't. what I started to introduce is the digestive. I do 1 capsule now a week,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll slowly, eventually be able to, you know, because he's not swallowing anything, right, pill-wise.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really excited for what's come with the mood and the kids' GBX. He will take, but I have to grind it, and then it's the zinc.
Mm-hmm.
So when you identify that the children with autism have a very low tolerance of zinc in their body, how do you get that in them?
Mm-hmm.
But actually, Dr. Sean shared with me to take the kid's mood, mix it in with the fundamentals, and at least work your way up. But he said as long as he's getting 2 of the GBX, then that's good, right? So that's our new routine going home. We will have his blood tested again in July, just to keep on that July, like that yearly regimen. But what this has done, I want to share 2 things and then close off with that. So the one thing that we really started noticing with Garrett is back to that emotion thing. Our family really never understood autism, and they didn't understand when he'd have these meltdowns on the floor, how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Garrett now, when we go and visit my mom or his grandmother, he will give them a hug, and he will give them a kiss without me having to say to do this. He responds with, "We're leaving. This is where I give my grandparents a hug and a kiss." Or I always tell people, or he'll do a high five.
And it's like kind of coming naturally rather than a trained thing.
Right. It's very natural, very natural. And he likes to go to Nana's. He's just, to me, like a normal, just like my other children now. It's like when he goes to Nana's, he knows he can have electronics where he can't have electronics at home. It's like they know what they can, you know. And so every once in a while we'll get in the truck and he'll look at me and go, "Call Nana." And I'll be like, but I know it's because, but I've now helped her to understand if those electronics aren't good for any child, let alone Garrett, because it sucks them into his world. And so she now hides everything before he gets there. And she now is not afraid that she'll say, well, you can have 10 minutes of videos on YouTube. And then she shuts it down. We don't get the meltdowns anymore because now he's learned his boundaries with Nana, right? And she's comfortable. So, and the last thing I want to say is before we headed out, so the beginning of August, we began potty training Garrett. And it was really, we had realized that he had learned that if you put the diaper on me, then this is where I go pee. Something as simple as that, because from a parent's perspective for potty training with an autistic child, you just kind of throw your hands up like, I have no clue. So as soon as I realized that I was actually teaching my child, this is where we go pee, I thought, well, I can teach him where we go pee, right? Or where we have a bowel movement. And literally in 3 days, he was completely potty trained.
My
potty
gosh.
Trained. 3 days.
That is huge.
3 days, and honestly, it was our own fear that held us back. So that's why I say it's so important from the parent's perspective to just go within yourself and ask yourself what it is that you feel is the most important thing that's speaking to you at this moment. And don't try to put the entire puzzle together. Just work one piece at a time. And that's why, you know, they say that, you know, autism, it's about the pieces, right? But, you know, we all have a puzzle. Our life is a puzzle. And, you know, if you've ever seen a puzzle and sometimes the corners get nicked and sometimes it might not, we're trying to put something together and it's not fitting. That's the best. I'm a very visual person, and that's the best thing I can share with is just look at you as a puzzle and ask yourself, what's the next piece?
Well, I think what I love about your story is your story of looking under every rock, not taking no for an answer, having a vision of what you wanted your son's life to look like, being persistent and never giving up. I mean, many families after they had that healing regression would never have gone back to the product. They might have attacked the product and said, that product caused this terrible result. and that's it, I'm done.
Mhm.
And yet you had the courage to go back, and that's when your son actually experienced his greatest benefits.
Yes, yeah, his greatest healing.
So, your persistence, I'm sure you are just a real inspiration to all the other champion moms that are watching today. And I thank you so much for sharing your story.
You're welcome. And anytime that somebody wants to reach out to me, just even if you want to send another parent to me, just send me a message and we can set up a one-to-one talk. And I will be setting aside time to just have a conversation like we're having today. Ask that question, and I just feel like this is just a huge opportunity for us to share and bring all people to the middle.
Yeah.
And when we bring them, that's all we're here to do, is just bring you to the middle. And then let you decide.
Right.
You have a voice too.
Right.
And we live in such a world where everybody's telling us what we should do.
Yeah.
And it's time to find that inner voice. And if you're a parent with a child on the spectrum, sometimes you have to be their voice if they're nonverbal. But just remember that their voice is pretty strong and powerful, And so that's right. It's really just, I've met many parents that their children are high functioning. They're talking, but they have so many needs as well, and communication and, things like that. So, so I see us all linking together, linking our arms and connecting and sharing all of our stories collectively for one big puzzle, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to add my piece, Garrett's journey, to the puzzle, and that's that big master plan, right?
It's a mom's revolution.
And don't leave out the dads, because I've had lots of dads reach out to me and say, don't forget about the dads. We actually do struggle with, and my husband actually struggled with the diagnosis. My husband, we learned along the way with Garrett's journey that he actually has Asperger's. And so, just to really conclude, with his Asperger's, he would always say to me, Garrett's just like me. There's no problem. So now I've got denial in my house, and I'm in my head going, there's something wrong with my son. So, but now he's like my greatest supporter, and our marriage has really turned a big turning point because I understand him. So we've been married 12 years. We have, 3 children with us that are in our lives every day, that are just like, they're our fire, right? They're our fire. So, but I appreciate this interview today. And
yes, she's from Hawaii, right? Yeah, she's from Hawaii, and she's actually from Canada.
Yes,
and I'm from Hawaii. But we dress opposite today.
Absolutely. And I'm open for any invitations to Hawaii. It's on my bucket list.
Okay. Until next time, Malama Bono. Take care.
Bye.